Okay, excellent. Thanks so much for the introduction, and thanks, guys, for your time today. Really excited to go through this topic. So I've titled it "Ghosts in the Machines" because we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence and its impact on instructional design methodology. Don't know if you guys are familiar with the term before. Just before we go into the presentation itself, just to let you know, I experienced a bit of the ghost in the machine myself last night. I was working away on my presentation, and my laptop completely died on me. A lot of work, unfortunately, lost, and I unsuccessfully tried to seek out the ghost that had caused the damage and didn't do so. So just had to change over machines this morning and try to resurrect what I could of this presentation. But I think we're back on track now. But I just thought it was a bit ironic given the title of the presentation here today. But the ghost in this case actually refers to AI and how it I suppose how it interacts with our machines in terms of our hardware and our software. We're going to look at instructional design today, as I said. So just a quick introduction to myself, I suppose, before we go into the presentation piece. My name is Lorcan Ryan. I'm based here in Limerick in Ireland, and I work as principal e-learning specialist for Regeneron Pharmaceuticals. So I do work in the compliance regulated environment that I'm going to speak to today. I have experience as a learning designer, so I have worked, I obviously work in e-learning at the moment, but I have worked in classroom-based learning. I've also worked as a technical writer as well, in terms of creating technical documentation. I've taught at university level, and I've also worked as a professional trainer, and I've also completed some research as well in the University of Limerick. So a bit of a mixed bag of experience, maybe like all of us on the call today. In terms of, I suppose different industries then I've looked at, I'm currently working in the medical industry, which is really interesting because it's everything to do with compliance. It's obviously competency is a big role to play in training, but there's also a big focus on compliance because we're in an industry that's closely monitored by the FDA and regulatory organizations like that as well. So I hope to bring a little bit of that flavor to today's talk also. I've worked in the software industry then, and that's more so a kind of look at professional user assistance in terms of online help, training courses for software and so on. The focus there was more on usability and sometimes user certification as well. And as I said, I've also worked in the educational sector. So I suppose that is more emphasis on the educational side of things as well. So we're looking at like the QCA grading of students, their employability when they finish up their university course and so on and so forth. So as I said, a little bit of a mixed bag there. Full disclosure before I start to talk, I'm not a technology specialist, so I do work in e-learning. I do obviously interact with technology, but I'm not a programmer. I'm not an AI specialist. I do not work for an AI vendor, so no vested interests here today, guys. Not trying to sell any AI tools. I'm just someone who's interested in AI. I hear a lot about it, and I've seen bits and pieces of AI. I haven't by any means seen the full extent of what AI can do, but I do think it's interesting how it's creeping more and more into our everyday conversations about what we do as content developers. So that's really what I wanted to do here today, was just take a look at the technologies that are there, how they apply to our current landscape, and then how we think they might apply in the future. So that's a bit about myself. The Ghost in the Machine, as I alluded to in the title, we're not going to spend too much time on the history of this. The term originated in a book called The Concept of the Mind by Gilbert Ryle in 1949. It's about mind-body dualism. So the term actually originated referring to the ghost being the mind and the machine is the body. The term has evolved over time. And now when we talk about ghost in the machine in modern kind of day lexicon, I suppose, we're kind of referring more so to this emergent consciousness as sometimes AI is within our computer hardware and software. Just as a footnote, in my search for the origin of the term, I did find that there's actually an album by the Police called Ghost in the Machine in 1981, which isn't actually a bad album at all. So recommend you check that one out as well. So just a little bit about what we mean in the Ghost in the Machine, the origin of the term. But today we're kind of talking about AI and how it works and the tools that we use. So then in terms of learning objectives for today, we're going to look at the key concepts around this area. So we're going to look at what we mean by instructional design. I'm sure we all have a pretty solid idea of what that is, but just to do a quick reiteration of that, the same with artificial intelligence, and then just look very quickly how they fit together. We're then going to explore the impact of artificial intelligence on instructional design by looking at the ADDIE model. We'll explain what the ADDIE model is if anyone isn't familiar with that. We'll then look briefly to the future. We'll take out our crystal ball and have a quick look at what AI might look like in the future, and then we'll finish up with a quick discussion of our thoughts. So then in terms of the timeline of what we're going to look at, we're going to again start with background, move on then to the A and the D in ADDIE, which is analysis and design. The second D of ADDIE is development, and then we're going to finish up with implementation and evaluation. At the end of each of these sections, then we'll have a recap and a pause for reflection. So if there's any questions, we can kind of have a look at those if anyone has any confusion around any of the terms we've introduced. And we will have a couple of learning activities, nothing too heavy, guys, for you to concern yourselves with, but just for a little bit of interaction along the way. So without further ado, we'll start off with the first section, which is our background. So again, what is instructional design? I'm sure we all are aware of instructional design and what it entails, but instructional design we can define as the creation of learning experiences and materials resulting in the acquisition and application of knowledge and skills. Some of the materials that we create in the world of instructional design are documentation. So we could have training handouts, manuals, audio voiceovers, the graphics that we use in our training materials, video content, and then interactive digital multimedia, which would be e-learning, gamification, VR simulations, and so on. What does good instructional design then look like? We know what instructional design is. We're creating training materials. So 4 characteristics of good instructional design are that it's learner-centric and it's personalized. So when we're creating training, we want to tailor to the individual. It has to suit what their training objectives actually are. The second thing is that it's goal-oriented and that those goals are measurable. So we need to, when we're creating our training, we need to have actually goals and achievable goals with that as well, and things that we can measure. Because how can we assess whether our training has been effective or not if we don't have a way to measure that? The third thing then that it's timely training. Okay, so there's no point in rolling out training when people don't need it. Or on the flip side, if people are going to perform a task or need some information, if that training isn't available to them at that time, it's not as effective as it could be. So it needs to be on time and it needs to be an engaging learning experience. We need to give learners realistic challenges. So if we're giving learners assessments, they have to be challenging enough that they test their knowledge, but not too difficult for them to be able to get frustrated and to be unable to consume the information that we've given them. Okay, so 4 characteristics of good instructional design. And now just a very light example pulled from the movie The Matrix. If anyone is familiar with that, we're going to look at our friend Neo. Very short clip here that I'm going to play for you guys just to see this looks like in action. So I've chosen to share my sound, so hopefully you can hear this, but let me know if you can't.
Combat training. Jiu-jitsu. I'm going to learn jiu-jitsu. Holy shit. Hey, Mikey, I think he likes it. How about some more? Hell yes. Hell yeah. I know Kung Fu.
Okay, guys, that's the clip. You might be wondering what on earth does Neo and the Matrix have to do with training, but bear with me. We go to the next screen and we just break down what's happened here. So for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, what's happening here is Neo is the protagonist in this movie. Neo needs the acquisition of these skills. In this case, he needs these martial arts skills to go and fight the enemy in the movie. So he needs to get this training on demand and in a timely fashion for him to be able to achieve his tasks. So if we are going to take this model of what good instructional design is, we can say it is learner-centric and personalized because it's exactly tailored to what the person needs in this case. So the training he gets is actually exactly what he requires for the situation. Is it goal-oriented and has measurable outcomes? It is, because in the scene after this, he goes into a simulated environment and he actually has to test out his skills, and he's given a stern test by his colleague in the movie, Lawrence Fishburne. It's just in time because he gets the training as and when he needed it. And again, the realistic challenge is that he has to apply the skills in the real world after he has acquired in the training environment. So again, a very light example, but just to kind of get us thinking outside the box a little bit, that when we think about any training, whether it's for a corporate training like we're going to look at in this presentation, or whether it's for kind of training that we would take ourselves, or even just to to figure out how to fix our lawnmower or something. Any kind of training, whether it's self-taught or whether it's rolled out by an organization, should actually meet these characteristics of what good design are. So bearing that in mind, let's go on to artificial intelligence. So we've looked at instructional design. What do we mean by artificial intelligence? So as we know, AI is the simulation of human intelligence by machines, especially computer systems. When we think of AI, then we think of things like search engines, recognition tools. So if anyone has got those facial recognition functions on their phone, you know that if you've got photos in your gallery, you can recognize pictures of your friends and family automatically. It's pretty cool technology. We have autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars, for example, and we have generative and creative tools. So then AI itself, when we check in on what our understanding of what the technology is, good AI tools usually require two items. They require a good algorithm and a good data set. Okay, so if we go back to the early days of what we could consider to be early AI, which you might argue, is it AI or not? But when Amazon first started suggesting products to us based on the metadata that we had around their purchases. So if you can remember online shopping, you might be too young to remember online shopping in the early noughties, but I remember going on, you had a shopping basket, and cookies would collect data about you the next time you logged into Amazon, and it would start suggesting products for you based on your previous purchases. So its data set was basically your shopping preferences. And I do remember people getting very kind of paranoid about, Big Brother is watching me and the computer's trying to figure out everything about me. But basically what it was doing was capturing a very small set of data about yourself, and it was building out suggestions based on that. These days, I suppose we have larger data sets that our apps can pull from, and more sophisticated algorithms. So we talk about AI technologies like self-driving cars, for example. The self-driving cars are still pulling data from a data set. So we have satellite imagery, for example, or navigational data from road systems is feeding into that algorithm, and it's kind of intelligently setting out recommendations for a car where to drive, so on and so forth. So it's the same principle. It's just to get our mindset into the way of thinking that AI does require that algorithm and a good data set to go with it. Okay. Bearing that in mind, then we can see the application of AI across different domains. We can see plenty of examples in health and medicine. We'll look at those further in this presentation. We can look at military examples, generative AI, even in the world of gaming. We have bots. So in today's presentation, we're actually going to look at the application of AI to the instructional design process. The potential benefits that we could hope to get by applying AI in instructional design include faster content development, and then an associated reduced cost with that as well. Enhanced learner engagement, because we can quickly and efficiently build AI multimedia. We can personalize content really easily now, where it was more difficult to do so before. And we can also get instant feedback from our audience as well. So if we have any issues with the user experience, we get those straight away, and we can make tweaks to our training to optimize it for our learners. Okay, so just to define then the scope for today again. So today we are going to look at the impact of AI on instructional design, and we're going to use the ADDIE model. There's a bunch of different models we have in the world of instructional design. ADDIE again stands for analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. So we're just going to chop up the world of instructional design using that particular model. We're going to look at how AI impacts on each of those areas. We're going to look specifically at e-learning and classroom-based learning. We have a scenario that's going to guide us through that. And then we're going to look at it, as I mentioned before, in relation to employee training in a regulatory environment. So we're just going to look at that flavor of what the compliance world requires from AI as well. So to recap on section 1, then we discussed what instructional design is. We discussed what artificial intelligence was. And then we talked about some of the potential benefits of AI when we apply it to instructional design. So I'm just going to move into our first mini learning activity. So we just have a small scenario that we're going to introduce here. We're just going to carry this throughout the next half an hour or so as well. We've a couple of small little learning activities that will tie into this scenario. So we'll just make sure we understand it from the outset. So we're talking about a fictional company here, guys. We're going to call them Shamrock eMed, okay? Shamrock eMed are a global manufacturer of pharmaceutical products, okay? So these guys are based in Ireland. They have headquarters here. I've chosen Ireland because I'm here in Ireland myself, so forgive me for that. Head office in Ireland with 700 employees, and the company also have an overseas office in Japan. with a further 300 employees. Okay, so 1,000 employees in total, 700 in their head office in Ireland, with an overseas office in Japan, with a further 300 employees. And the company are subject to compliance requirements set out by regulators such as the FDA, because they're pharmaceutical producers. And training forms an important part of these requirements. Okay, as I mentioned, we're going to use these as the basis for our learning activities throughout this presentation. So the first part of the scenario is, as a quick knowledge check, take a moment to consider the questions below and then share your thoughts on Zoom. So I'll just give you guys about 60 seconds or so just to consider the two questions below. The first one is, what are the 4 characteristics of good instructional design that the company should aim for in their training content? And what potential benefits could Shamrock eMed hope to gain through the implementation of AI in their instructional design process? Okay, there's no right or wrong answer here. We've kind of covered some of these points earlier, but feel free to throw in whatever pops into your mind. And as I said, we'll take about 60 seconds to have a think about that, and then we just regroup. If you have any answers, you can just put them into the Zoom chat. Okay, so we'll just pause for a minute there. Very good. I can see answers coming in already. Student-centered, timely, personalized, measurable outcomes. Very good. Okay, just jump on ahead to the another answer coming in. Potential benefits, streamline production techniques. Yeah, exactly. Streamlining with AI is a big plus, because I suppose whenever we're talking about incorporating any new technology, return on investment is one of the first things that the buyers in the company are going to ask for. What benefits can we get? So definitely, if we can show we're streamlining production techniques, that's a very solid argument for it. Maybe something about multi-channel, so students can learn and advice. That's a great point as well about, I presume that refers to having training on different platforms so that they can use different devices. So not everybody wants to sit down at their PC kind of thing and take their training. Mobile learning, micro learning maybe. Modular units that can be tailored. I love that. That's I think, are you referring to single sourcing there, Bridget? That's kind of something that I've seen before. It's really good that you have chunks of information that can be kind of reshaped.
Maybe not single sourcing so much as it's just like you have people in Japan as well as Ireland, and what works in Japan. Based on I work a lot with people in Mexico at the moment, and what works in Mexico doesn't necessarily work in Edinburgh. So it may not. We may choose not to use or even design extra.
Yeah, I love it. It's personalization, it's localization, it's kind of taking into account the local audience, isn't it, that are taking the training.
And there is the as well as the sort of transcreation, true localization aspect to that. There's also things like you've got content that, and I think probably in single sourcing is relevant here, and it you've got a process that's broadly the same, but there's one thing that's different for it. That the product I work on has a different drugs database for a particular locale, that but it still kind of works in broadly the same way. So things like that, where you can make things that are the same but different, is really powerful.
Yeah, I love it. They're all great points, guys. I just pulled in the generic points that we had, but all of your points make sense. And really, we cover accessibility later on in this presentation as well. I'm a big proponent of that, actually, and using AI to do it, because so sometimes it can be a heavy lift to make content suitable and accessible for all different types of learners, which isn't to say we shouldn't do it, but AI definitely reduces the lift involved in it. So again, the 4 characteristics of good instructional design, everything you said, and then learner-centric and personalized. Personalized could incorporate that accessibility. I think it's goal-oriented, just in time, it's engaging learning experiences, and then the benefits, again, faster content development, streamline our production, and so on, enhance the learner engagement. Hopefully personalization comes in here again, and then instant feedback. So that's a great way to
Lorcan, the speed is just beautiful. I mean, wow, that's what we've been experimenting with.
Okay.
More about that. I'm just loving that in AI stuff. Wow.
Yeah, it's fast. It's quick. Perfect, guys. So we'll jump on to the second section then. So we're moving into ADDIE now. So I've just taken analysis and design and put them together. So the A and the D and ADDIE, we're just going to take together. So we're just going to kick off with analysis then. So analysis is just basically reviewing a training needs to determine things like what kind of a problem are you trying to solve. So is there a skill deficit for people performing tasks? Is there a knowledge gap? Is it something else completely? What kind of expected learning outcomes do you want to achieve from that? So what kind of what kind of results do you expect after completion of training? Are you looking for people to improve their task proficiency? Is there a reduction of errors? Is it something else again? And then to define exactly who the learning audience is, because quite often you can, if you work as an instruction designer, someone can come along to you and say, I want training on such and such a topic. And you say, okay, the person is a subject matter expert. They know a ton of information about a subject. They want to hand it all off to you and say, make me a training about this. And you're kind of like, okay, let's take a step back. What problem are we trying to solve here? What do we hope to get from the training? It's not just that people know about something. What do we want them to be able to do after the training? And then who exactly should get it? Are we talking about everybody in the company gets this, or a subset of people, and so on and so forth? So analysis is just breaking down that initial request or training need. So the analysis component then, when you work in regulatory compliance environments, is very important, because training is actually a regulatory requirement. So it's not just a nice to have. Employees must be fully trained before they perform tasks. If they're not fully trained and in accordance with what's set out by the regulators, that would actually be seen as a serious inspection finding, and would be something that would be frowned upon in a compliance environment. Training also has to be completed by assigned due date. So training is assigned out, it has a date next to it, and the training has got a version control number as well. So if you're not trained on the latest version of the training by the assigned due date, again, you're kind of you're not in compliance. Sign off of all training must also be properly recorded in an LMS as well, or paper-based documents to provide an audit trail. So again, if you're having learners complete training and that's not available to analyze, if you're an auditor or an inspector looking at the company operations, that would be seen as breach of compliance as well. So analysis is actually a very important component of ADDIE in compliance environments also. Failure to adhere to it then can, as I said, if there's any training gaps, overdues or sign-offs, issues discovered, that can be a real issue if you work on compliance. So then we look at, how I suppose can AI impact on analysis, having spoken about what we need to do. So data collection is a really powerful function that's in a lot of AI tools, that it can pull out and analyze different patterns of speech, behavior, even performance of learners to kind of really, I suppose, uncover what the training need is. We sometimes have access to a lot of data, but it's very hard to parse out what exactly the data means. So these tools can automatically collect data. They can perform analysis for us. So if we have machine learning as part of our AI, we can pull out information into dashboards. We can generate graphs and charts. It helps us to just kind of identify trends and so on, that if we kind of think there's a training need, it's always more powerful to be able to put statistics against that and track trends to see where there might be pitfalls or knowledge gaps or so on and so forth. And then some of these tools also have data-driven recommendations as well, that can suggest the most suitable training modes available. So there's a bunch of different AI functionality that can help us with this analysis component of ADDIE. Some of the tools then we have in this world are data analytics software. So Microsoft BI, Tableau, Luzmo. The screenshot here is Microsoft BI. So Microsoft BI can plug into your database. It can pull out the information and it can do some really neat kind of automatic parsing of the content and build out those graphs for us. We could, of course, do this manually ourselves if we had the time and effort. But again, just having AI being able to intelligently build out stuff, automatically update it and so on, just saves such a lot of time. And you can see, especially when you're trying to justify training, some of the things we look at with training is, are we overtraining people? So you can see, for example, the saturation of training that people have received, and the amount of deployments that they've gotten, what version they're on. And LMS will do a lot of this as well, but just to be able to pull out really quick visual reports, data analytics software, really, really helpful in this area. In design then, we're talking about, so analysis, we've, I suppose, looked at the training need. We're going to assume now that we are building out training to address this need that was identified. So design is basically what we do before we start building the training. So whether we're writing a training document, we're building an e-learning course, or we're designing classroom training, it's good practice to design it first. So we build out a blueprint or a storyboard of a training course to determine the learning objectives. Good to get those set as early as possible if we possibly can, to create a course outline, develop our draft scripts, and select the type of multimedia content that we might include. We also map out the learning activities that we're going to include, and think about the assessments, how we're going to grade our learners. We're going to think about how long our course is going to be, and if we have a pass rate, and then how learners progress through the course. If we're using a course for that training, is it going to be a linear, just clicking through a course? Is it going to be skill or achievement based? Can learners choose their own pace? Is it self-paced, or just are we going to have it timed that they have to do it in a certain time frame? So all of these considerations, again, are important in regulatory compliance environments, because training has to be designed to meet compliance-related tasks and issues. So if we're designing training and it's not hitting what the regulators say that the company should be, the areas it should be focusing on, then it's not really effective training. And the learning objectives, it's great that they're there, but they also have to be specific and measurable. Okay, so again, no point in having very broad learning objectives that we can't test at the end of the training, because if we script the learning objective, we must be able to, at the end of the training, go back to that original objective and be able to stand over to say that, yes, we've met that training objective, or no, we have not. And the idea behind that then, quite simply, is that once learners complete the training, they're able to go out into the real world, inverted commas, they're able to go out onto the floor or wherever their work environment is with that training knowledge, and they can practically apply it to the situations that they encounter in their day-to-day job as well. No point in giving them some very high-level abstract training and then saying, there you go, sit down in front of a piece of lab equipment or a machine in a medical processing area, and they have no idea how to use it. So there have to be good, specific, measurable learning objectives with that. So design, as we said, it maps out what a course will achieve, what kind of content it will contain, and how it will be structured. Poorly designed instructional material could result in poor task performance and deviations from compliance, and then issues with the quality management system or anything else related to regulation. So how can we use AI then to help us with design in terms of ADDIE? So when we talk about design, we mentioned personalization already and adaptive learning. So AI can be used, and especially these new AI-powered learning management systems, or LMS, can create learning paths for us, which are really cool. They can kind of analyze our performance. They can see that if we're doing well in a particular topic or struggling, on the other hand, that they can kind of customize the experience for us and generate these personalized learning paths, which are a really nice feature. Localization, we kind of alluded to a little bit earlier as well, that we have to take into the needs of different cultures as well. It's not just about translating. So we want people who don't speak English as their first language to be able to understand the content, but we also want to tailor the cultural aspects as well. If there's anything else in those areas that we need to tweak. For example, we had was it the mention of Mexico versus Edinburgh? There are different needs in different locales, so we need to be aware of that. We can use AI to help with that also. And then the third piece we kind of mentioned as well was around accessibility. So as we know, learners have different abilities and different preferences on how they like to learn or how they're able to learn. And we can use AI to help us with that also. So just to pull a few examples of what that looks like, when we're talking about personalization or adaptive learning, there are a number of different LMS. Adaptemi, EdApp, and 360 are a few I came across. The screenshot is actually from Duolingo. If anyone uses the mobile app for language learning, it's really cool. It gives some learning paths for you based on your performance. It also is able to kind of pull out what words you've struggled on before and make sure to throw those into the mix for future lessons that you complete, so that you're getting more practice in those particular words. So that's really nice adaptive learning, I think, because it's kind of focusing in on you know, on areas that you can strengthen in. And it's not necessarily just saying fail, try again. It's taking those words and it's putting them into the mix and giving you a chance to practice again on them. So that's a really nice feature. Localization, we mentioned, I think you're probably all familiar with machine translation tools at this point. Google Translate, we've probably all used at some point or another. DeepL Translator and Bing, Microsoft are also rated. I'm sure there's a bunch of other tools as well I haven't alluded to, but I think we're all pretty familiar with the concept. You have a source language, you put in a term, and then you click translate. It comes out in the target language that you want it to. So really nice way to automatically translate if you feel that the quality is sufficient for what you need for that particular item. And then the third piece we spoke to in terms of design is accessibility. So we can now automatically generate captions from video and voiceover, which is actually really cool because I know from past experience that we used to try and do this kind of manually when we had shorter videos and type up subtitles of some of the main keywords. It just took an awful long time. So YouTube and Vimeo are two I just pulled out here. They actually do a really good job, to be fair, on recognizing the speech that's in the video. Now, obviously, if your video is containing company-specific terms and things like that, the AI recognition might struggle with terms that it hasn't heard before. So you might require a bit of post-editing, but I found generally in what I do, it gets about a 95% accuracy. Just go back and post-edit those kind of 5% of words that just need a bit of tweaking. So it's really cool that it takes the heavy lift out of it. So that's on closed captions, which, you know, is obviously a text version for people who might have hearing difficulties or impairments. We also have automatic transcription services as well that do something similar. If we're kind of having a meeting, like a verbal meeting like we are right now, I'm talking away, or it could be, you know, an instructor in a classroom, that's not much good to someone who's a hearing impairment and can't hear every word I'm saying. So transcription software is able to recognize my speech. It's able to create a text version of it, and then that learner actually has access to a text-based version of the content as well as the audio version as well. So pretty cool there also. So just a quick recap. I know I'm going through this really quickly, guys, but I just have a bit of content to cover, so I hope I'm not losing anyone. To recap on what we covered there on analysis and design. Analysis is the review of the training need, and then design is just building out a blueprint or a storyboard of the course. And when we talk about design, we're interested in things like personalization, localization, and accessibility. So I'm just going to pop us on to the next learning activity that we have here. So again, we'll just take a short moment to pause and have a think about the little activity that we have here. We're back to our Shamrock EMED, again, our global manufacturer. They work in regulated industry. They have 1,000 employees, 700 in Ireland, 300 in Japan. Okay, you're going to imagine that you're employed as the lead instructional designer for this company. So imagine the health and safety department have come to you and they said they're concerned about statistics in relation to the outbreak of fires in some of the production areas. Okay, there's been a number of actual fires and also near misses in recent times as well that the guys in the health and safety department are quite concerned about. Okay, the most information they've given you about the actual statistics are there are statistic numbers, inverted commas. Okay, those incidents have occurred across both sites, so in Ireland and Japan. So in response to this, health and safety think training is the way to go. They think, okay, we need to action this here. So they want 2 different training items to be created. Okay, the first one is an e-learning course about general fire safety. Okay, so this is e-learning that's going to go out to all 1,000 employees, and the aim of this course is to reduce the risk of future fires. So people need to know a little bit about how safe behavior, what it looks like in the workplace, and just to take every sensible precaution that they possibly can to reduce the risk of fires. So that's the first piece, the e-learning course called General Fire Safety. And then the second training item they want is a classroom-based fire warden training to be available, but they only want this to be available to manager level and above in the company. Okay, so they didn't give a specific number of people. They just said everyone who's a manager level or above is able to sit in on this classroom training. And once they complete the classroom training, they'll be certified fire wardens. When they're certified fire wardens, if a fire does break out, these are the people that will take the lead. They'll be able to make sure that everyone around them is safe. They'll be able to respond appropriately to the fire as well. So that's the second component of this scenario as well. So 2 training items here. Our knowledge check then, and it relates to analysis and design, is to take a moment to consider the questions below and to share your thoughts in the Zoom chat. So the first question is, how would you use AI tools to help with the analysis of this training request? So just have a think about how your AI tools could analyze the risk that has been presented by Health and Safety Department, okay? How could you use AI to visualize any trends or patterns? And even how could you use it, if possible, to generate lists of the learners mentioned to deploy the training out to? So again, one training is going out to everybody in the company. The other is just going to manager level and above, okay? So that's the first piece. How would you use AI tools to help with the analysis of the training request? The second piece is, how would you use AI tools to help with the design of the e-learning course and the classroom training? So this is coming back to our personalization, our localization, and our accessibility. So how could you use AI to personalize the e-learning course and the classroom training using the type of tools that we covered a moment ago? So again, we'll just take a moment or two to have a think about this. So I'll let you guys have a think about that. If you have answers, you can put them into the chat. Yeah, trends on locations and activities. It's really good. We want to assess the risk, and that's a really good way to do it, is to look at, you know, maybe one of the locations has got 90% of the fires. That's probably going to tell us something. Really good point. The activities as well around, yeah, fires could be more likely to occur in a certain part of the production process. So we could zone in on that as well. Number of trained fire marshals per number of workers. That's a really good point as well. That if we have, you know, Japanese office has got one fire marshal for every 50 people. The Irish office has got one for every 5 people. Obviously, there's a bit of a disparity there as well. And position the training in the right place. Exactly. Generate some AI potential scenarios. Yeah, you could do, because that's a really effective way actually in training. If it's risk-based training and safety is involved, you can kind of show consequences of what happens when you're not following safety protocols. It's kind of a powerful way to remind people of what can happen. And perhaps also analyze when fires have occurred, see if there are trends. Yeah, exactly. So kind of near misses versus when fires have actually occurred. Differentiate between those two things. Yeah. They're great points, guys. Let me jump ahead. So a couple of items I pulled here. So we can use, we're talking about the analysis. First of all, we could use our data analytics software to analyze the risk. So what we could do, as you guys rightly said, is, you know, health and safety usually have some kind of a database where they record incidents. If they don't, they probably should. So what we can do is, if there's not a kind of quick and easy way to pull this data out, we could use analytics to kind of access their database, and we could pull out those incidents. We could use the kind of visualization functionality within this software as well to identify trends or patterns. We can create nice visual graphs and identify, you know, where and when things are happening. As you guys rightly said, the fire warden training as well, we could extract the, you know, we can quite easily find out who's a manager level or higher by kind of doing the same analysis from the HR system as well. And it's a really good idea to kind of consider things like location, part of the process where fires are more likely to happen. Those are really, really good points. And I think that's definitely where, you know, again, look, we can do this as humans. We can pull it out and we can put on our Sherlock Holmes hats and we can kind of do this investigation ourselves. But I think the point is just to get that kind of a lift from the AI to kind of help us pull this data. It can be a good leg up when we're doing this kind of analysis. Secondly, then, how would we use AI to help with the design of the e-learning course? So said adaptive learning. Okay, we have AI enabled LMS, so we could kind of monitor people's performance, and if they were having difficulties with certain parts of the training, we could definitely personalize it. We can use localization. We can use MT software and also to be able to localize training. Now, I mentioned MT software a bit in relation to localization. I know there's a lot more to localization, just translating, but I haven't yet really seen something that does automatic cultural adaptation. It might exist. I didn't come across it in my research, to be honest. But that might be something that we can see in the future as well, that would be really cool to kind of take into account kind of the other kind of cultural aspects of localization as well. The third piece then that I just mentioned was accessibility. We can kind of add in different voice and text options as well if we're using multimedia, just to make sure that all our training is accessible for learners of different abilities and learning preferences. So I suppose the translation piece is just bearing in mind that we have a Japanese office, and we want, if we are creating the content in English, obviously that there's a Japanese version available. If we're creating it in Japan, that there's an English version available, so that, you know, we're not excluding anybody. And there may also be additional languages that we're not considering. Just because those are the countries our offices are in, doesn't mean everyone might speak those two languages as their first language as well. So there's a bit to consider there, but this is kind of just generally how we could use AI in that. Great stuff. So I'll just go ahead then to our development piece. So when we talk about development, we're talking about bringing the storyboard to life or building out instructional design materials. So development refers to creating a course structure, navigation devices. Our text-based content is obviously our instructional material that we script it. If we're including multimedia, we mentioned that as well. And then we will also build out learning activities to keep people engaged throughout our courses and our training. We'll define the assessments and the scoring as well for our users. Development is important in regulatory compliance environments because all of our learning content, it goes without saying, must be 100% accurate. You can make that argument, I suppose, for any training, but it is obviously a big deal if you're talking about working in an industry where you're making medicines or something along those lines. And if there's any small discrepancy in the accuracy of the instructions, can obviously have a big impact if you're talking about medicines that people are taking, or it could be medical devices that people are inserting into their body. It's really, really important. And for that reason, we have multiple layers of reviews and workflows within regulated industries to make sure that nothing kind of slips through the cracks. Learning assessments, in addition to the content being correct, learning assessments must also be meaningful and realistic. So there's no point in us giving people a ton of information and putting in, like, you know, a true or false question at the end and saying, okay, you know, the learner has understood the 50 pages of content before that based on this one true or false question I've given them, and then off they go. So compliance kind of looks at the effectiveness of the training in terms of, you know, how well tested people are as well to assess that knowledge before they apply their tasks. So I suppose that speaks to the dual kind of objectives of this assessment of training in regulatory compliance environments. And that is not just that it's compliant, but it's also focusing on competency. So when you create training, you're thinking about these two keywords. You obviously have to be compliant. You have to follow what's set out by the regulators like the FDA, but you also have to make sure that people are competent in the tasks that they're completing, and also safe as well, because any failure or shortcoming in these areas can result in inspection findings and also issues with the safety of the final product that you're producing. So a key part of the production process. What have we got in AI then that can help us with development? We mentioned about automatic generation of AI, I think in the chat a little bit earlier. We can use AI to automatically create course structures. We can use AI to even create our scripts and edit them, or at least provide suggestions for editing. AI generated multimedia is where we fit in with our automatically generated images. We can also use AI to create voiceovers, animation, and video, as well as voiceover. And we can even create assessments automatically by feeding text into these AI tools. It'll automatically generate assessments for us. Okay, so again, just a quick whistle-stop tour through some of these apps that we have available at our fingertips today. So we have course creators like EdApp. What they'll do is just automatically basically create a course structure for you. You can feed in some basic text about a topic or just a summary of what you want to train on. Give it some basic parameters and it'll build out kind of a suggested course outline for you. So it won't actually populate the content, but it will build out kind of a sensible order of course structure topics for you. ChatGPT is probably something we've all seen a bit at this stage, and you can put in a pretty basic kind of a request into the system. So I typed in, write a description of artificial intelligence and how it's used in e-learning, and it gave me that content. And I was like, this was genuinely after I had put together this presentation. I was like, that kind of looks like what I've put together for my presentation. So it's kind of interesting. It's a bit spooky as well, which I suppose is why we might call it the ghost. But I was kind of like, this could be helpful. You know, it's something I want us to chat about a little bit if we've got time in a few minutes. But yeah, it definitely is. It's quite impressive for what it can do. I would say that much. So we can use ChatGPT to generate text. We can use grammar correction tools like Grammarly will offer editorial review of a text. So it'll analyze a text, it'll check its correctness, its clarity, its engagement, delivery, and its adherence to a style guide, which is really cool as well. We've got AI generated graphics, as we said. You can put in a search term and the image generator will actually produce some pretty cool stuff. So this is Google image effects in the screenshot. The inputted text was cluttered artist studio, light shining through, welcoming, and it's generated this really nice image. I said I would try the Microsoft image generator, or image creator, I should say, formerly known as Bing. It's called the Microsoft Image Creator now. I just signed up and I said I'd give it a little test. So I put in the keywords Irish, marathon runner, and steampunk styles, just out of interest, just to see what they come back with. It gave me this image was the first one, and this one was the second one. And I thought, this is really cool. I've literally just given it these three very diverse kind of search terms. It took a couple of seconds and it spitted out these really cool kind of images from these terms as well. So again, really impressive stuff. And it's something that we mentioned could save us a bit of time if we are generating images for our training. We can also generate animation using AI. There's an AI tool called Animator. We can give it some basic information and give it a description. You specify a few parameters about the tone of the content you want to create, how long you want it to be, the animation style. You select a few different character designs and so on. You click create, and it kind of puts together a little basic animation. I would say, from what I've seen, it probably is a bit of work to specify this as much as you would need to do for your own particular training. But I thought it was impressive that it did it so quickly. It gave you a kind of a rough outline of what your animation might look like. We have computer generated voiceover as well. So we have software such as Murph, KHT, and Speechify will generate voiceover tracks from text input, which is cool. So you type in your text or copy it in. You have a bunch of different voices you can choose from. You can also kind of play around with the settings in terms of the speed, the intensity of the voice, and so on and so forth, and get really impressive results. AI generated video, video generators like Vizsla, for example. I put in just the keywords fire safety, and it just gave me, I won't play the full track just in the interest of time, but just to play a few seconds of it.
Ensuring fire safety is our top priority. Trust our experts to keep you safe. Prevention is key. Learn how to protect your home and...
So it just gave me a short kind of a minute-long video. It used stock images, and it was nothing kind of too specific. It was quite high level and generic, but just the fact that you could put in keywords fire safety, I could have played around and gone a bit more specific with what I actually wanted from this video. But just the fact that it could spit out a 60-second video just based on those two words that I gave to it, and I did it really quickly as well, was also impressive. And then the final piece that we looked at was then the automatic creation of assessments. So we have automatic assessment generators that will just basically build out assessments for us. So we give it a text. In this case, I just copied some text out from Wikipedia about fire safety, copied it into Conquer, and hit the create button, and it automatically generated some multiple choice questions, some drag and drop, some mix and match. And really cool to see how quickly it did it. And the questions were actually pretty good as well. It parsed the text pretty effectively. So quick recap on development then. We're talking about building the instructional materials, obviously, and then the way that we can support it through AI. We're seeing more and more on this today. So the scenario then for learning activity for development is going to be, as an instructional designer, we're now developing two items. As we mentioned earlier, we have our e-learning course, and we have our fire warden training. We're going to consider using AI tools to reduce the project cost. So your task in this case is to evaluate the impact of AI in development. What we're going to do here, and I think I'm actually just going to skip over this activity, guys, in the interest of time, just so we can get on to implementation and evaluation. The learning activity here was just going to be, we were going to write out some learning objectives for the fire warden safety course. Okay, so we're just going to have a think about what you would need to do for fire warden safety training, write out some learning objectives, and then the solution to this activity was just going to see how ChatGPT got on with it. So I just fed in this search term, learning objectives for fire warden training, nothing else. hit the create button, and then it kind of churned out these 12 learning objectives in less than 10 seconds, which I thought, again, was really cool. The highlighted text just says that, look, we're going to need some post editing here. Would this encourage you as a content developer to use AI? That's debatable. Do people think these would be in line with the learning objectives that they would have written themselves? It's an interesting idea. But yeah, I think it's something we need to consider as content developers. Just with the speed of it, I do know that looking through it, these are definitely some of the learning objectives I probably would have scripted. I'm not sure if I would have gotten 12 learning objectives, being honest about it as well. It's broken them down. We may have written them a little bit differently as human writers as well. But again, just the speed and efficiency you get from it, I think, quite impressive. So just going to go on to our very final section now. Just have a quick check on the chat. Yeah, some kind of interest there. Yeah, it depends on the context. It definitely does. And there's a lot to be said about, ChatGPT. You give it something super specific or company specific, mightn't do a great job on it. So we definitely need to bear that in mind as well. Apologies again for going so fast, guys. I just do want to get through these last two pieces. So implementation in instructional design refers to deployment, scheduling, and assignment of training. We're talking about notifying learners of due dates, preparing our training. If it's classroom training, it's going to be what kind of technical equipment do we need, what learning materials do we need. The training delivery then specifies, and do we need an instructor in the room, is how long is the training going to be, and how we're going to sign off with learners. It's important in the world of compliance, again, because regulators do inspect regularly if people are trained. We said already that the LMS must be able to provide a complete and accessible history of learner completion records. This is part of an audit trail if you work in compliance environments. So that needs to be there and available for inspectors. And then anyone who delivers training must be a qualified trainer as well. So implementation is an important part in compliance. How do we use AI to help with our implementation? We can use intelligent tutoring systems. They use algorithms to be able to analyze learner performance and be able to give instruction and feedback to learners. So in other words, if learners are giving kind of essay type questions, it can parse out the text and it can give performance on that kind of qualitative type feedback outside of multiple choice questions and so on, which are a lot easier to grade. Virtual assistants then can give assistance to people if they have technical issues and so on. We've chatbots, we've voice assistants and avatars, for example, that can be integrated into training, whether it's e-learning or classroom-based. We can give people guidance, and we don't always have to have a human there to do that. So just a little joke image there about our teachers of the future, our little robots. Evaluation is our last piece. Then we're talking about how well training works. So how do our learners rate a training item? In Shamrock eMed, how satisfied were our learners with the training we developed for them? How well do learners learn and use that knowledge? So not just how satisfied are they, what do they actually do with the knowledge? How do they apply it outside their training environment? And then the results, what did their change in behavior actually achieve in the overall results? Evaluation is important as well, because obviously effective training is required for successful performance of tasks and should comply with regulatory requirements. AI technology then helps us with automatic graders. We can use, as I said, parse text and automatically grade, and we have instant scoring systems as well that can provide on-the-fly feedback to our learners. Very quick recap then of our final piece, and then our last little learning activity. We literally have a minute left now, so you can, if ISTC wants to kind of stop me, we can do it. I just have a very quick little learning activity. The scenario is assuming that we've deployed out the course, very well received by learners. We got really good comments. Just a couple of people said, look, we don't have a voiceover option, we need it. We realized then at that moment that we were so keen on getting our course out in time and assigned to everybody that the voiceover option was accidentally omitted. Okay, so the evaluation then today is just to listen to a couple of voiceover clips and decide which one is AI, which is the human. We might just have a very quick moment to do this. I'm just going to play these tracks quickly for you. So track number one, if it plays for me. Track number one.
My adult students are from multiple different professional backgrounds, and I enjoy integrating relevant topics into our classes so that you will be able to use them in daily conversations.
What do we think? Human or AI? AI. Correct.
I think.
Yeah, that one was AI. Okay, second one.
My adult students are from multiple different professional backgrounds, and I enjoy integrating relevant topics into our classes so that you will be able to use them in daily conversations.
Human or AI, do you think? One for human, one for better AI, and another one for human. That one actually was human. Yeah, the acoustics are human, definitely. That might have been a giveaway. We'll go on to the third clip.
My adult students are from multiple different professional backgrounds, and I enjoy integrating relevant topics into our classes so that you will be able to use them in daily conversations.
Human or AI? One for human, one for 2A for AI, 3 for AI. That one was AI. 4 for AI. That clip was AI. And then our fourth and final clip.
My adult students are from multiple different professional backgrounds, and I enjoy integrating relevant topics into our classes so that you will be able to use them in daily conversations.
Human, AI. 1 vote for human, 1 for AI. 2 for AI. 2 for human. It's 2-2. That one was AI as well. It actually turned out 3-2 on the votes to human, but that was actually AI as well, the final clip. So it's interesting. The objective here wasn't trying to fool anyone genuinely. It was just like even when I was putting down the tracks, I was like I had to go back to the source and look at them as well. So yeah, it was impressive, the last one, I think. And I didn't actually play around with it. I could have kind of adjusted the speed to make them more human-like with the AI. I purposely didn't do that. Again, I didn't want to kind of fool people or make AI kind of better than it actually is. Make it, try to imply that it's better than human. But I think it's getting really, really good. I do remember listening to AI voice over 10 years ago and thinking it's not great. It's fine, but it's not great. You could definitely tell the difference. Some of these it's kind of hard to pick out the difference between. So just put in our little graphics there of what we have. So that's kind of been a really quick kind of blast through, Addy. It hasn't left us a whole lot of time for discussion, but I've kind of just purposely put the subtitle "Food for Thought" just in case we were out of time, because I knew I had a lot to get through. So I've just kind of put maybe 3 topics down there for us to have a think about. We might have a chance to discuss them today, but maybe if we have a chance to regroup, maybe at a later ISTC or something along those lines, we could delve a bit further into them. But these 3 kind of topics came up time and time again when I was looking into AI and instructional design, was the human creativity versus AI. So will AI, do we think it's actually going to replace human activity? Is it going to be the creative role in instructional design and content development? Will it stifle us? Is it going to kind of make us less creative because we're more reliant on a machine? Or do we think it'll kind of act more like an enabler that, the calculator did? Like, we still can perform maths equations ourselves, but we do use calculator just to save time, basically. The second point was about ethics. Again, this comes up a lot also, privacy and ethics. So if we're talking about kind of using people's data in AI, is that giving us a bit of a concern about our personal privacy? Copyright of images, if it's building images from already copyrighted places, where does the copyright lie with the images it's creating? I don't know the answer, to be honest. Will AI be fair for using it to grade people, not just like in professional training, but if it's someone in college for an exam, if there's an AI kind of algorithm is grading like one of your children's essays in school and they're getting a really good mark or a really bad mark, how sure are we that there's no bias in the system with how it's grading it? And then the third point that came up was in relation to regulated industries, which I tried to kind of keep in consideration for today as well, as how will regulators feel about the increased use of AI? AI is already used, to be fair, in labs a lot with kind of protein analysis and those type of tasks. I do remember though when machine translation first came in, and there was a big kind of concern in the medical industry that you can't use computers to translate medical content. What if it gets it wrong? But like, I mean, a lot of that content all of that content still goes through multiple review cycles. So it's kind of, the early work is done, the post editing is still done by humans, it's still reviewed by humans. So are the regulators happy with that? It's kind of it's now an acceptable practice in the medical industry. So maybe the same will be true for generative AI in kind of training. when we talk about developing it as well, and what impact does that have on kind of compliance as well. So these are three kind of strands I just pulled out. And I don't know if people have any kind of strong thoughts, and you're welcome to put them into the chat.
Lorcan, by coincidence, we've had the lawyers on the image copyright thing literally this week. So the issue is that our engineers are using AI generated stuff from free design studios. And in fact, if you don't have a license, you don't own the copyright. The studio owns the copyright. So you need to watch it, because unfortunately, if as our engineers do, I mean, you know, it's nice, and our salespeople too are enjoying themselves preparing extra images and examples. The other thing to be aware of is if you do have a license, obviously you can't include copyright images, you know, with that. So if you're putting, I don't know, like a Coke logo or something, then you could fall foul there. So that's the other small wriggle. But yeah, we just found that out this week. So we're just sending in fact, you're reminding me I should have sent out an email about that.
Thanks, Bridget. That's actually really interesting. And I think we do have to be careful with that side of things when we're using these tools as well, that obviously, you know, if it's for commercial purposes, we obviously have to make sure we're okay with copyright and all that area as well. So I suppose, look, just circling back then to the topic of this was final thought, Jerry Springer style. Do you fear the ghost in the machine? So the ghost of the AI, we're content developers. Are we, you know, is there fear there? Do we, thanks Donna, just so you need to leave, thanks for your attendance. Do we feel a little bit kind of concerned about it? Do we welcome it? Do we think it's really cool stuff? Is it going to make our life easier? Is there a lot of kind of tedious tasks that we do, a lot of analytics, a lot of admin? Do we really want to kind of, you know, for instructional designers, do we want to spend our time with the learners rather than doing this kind of tedious stuff? Or, you know, we might not, you know, we might work as technical writers, so like our job might be writing. We kind of feel like people are going to start using ChatGPT to, you know, create the, you know, the really cool writing that we script. Just interested to see what people think really on that area.